Hey there, everybody. This is like take 4, which means that I'm gonna start feeling fairly intoxicated soon if this keeps up. My GoPro keeps conking out on me, so I just did a factory reset. I'm gonna try to speed this along. I'm gonna do a quick review at this point of the Knob Creek 9-year, everybody. If you haven't had it before, you absolutely have to give it a shot. Especially if you're new into bourbon, if you're somebody who normally reaches for a bottle of regular Jim Beam bourbon. By the way, Knob Creek is a Jim Beam product. If you're someone who normally does, Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, Wild Turkey, not that there's anything wrong with any of those, you really ought to give this a shot, guys. I think it is fairly affordable, let's say. Everybody has a different thickness of their wallet and different, measurements of what they would call, a true bargain bourbon, a true mid-range bourbon, or something on the top shelf. Knob Creek retails for around $35 at my favorite store in Maryland, which, my favorite store, of course, means they have the best prices and a pretty good selection. If you live elsewhere around the country, you may very well be able to find it for just a bit over $30. Now, of course, I have had this before, but I just want to introduce everybody to it. So cheers. These are going to have to get smaller and smaller because the GoPro is just not cooperating. As some of you know, I cracked the back screen, and I really have to get a new one soon here because this one's having multiple issues at this point. But we'll give it a little swirl. It's just so delightful. By the way, most of you know that I like my bourbon neat almost always, but I have been experimenting with old fashions, with doing bourbon on the rocks, just because, and a lot of you know that I like barrel proof stuff. I like stuff with, that's 90, barrel proof is always over 100 proof. I tend to enjoy bourbons that are, 90 proof, 100 proof, 100 and up. But just because that's the way it comes out of the barrel, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way to drink it. Of course, everybody has their own preference, and whatever way that you like to enjoy it is how you should enjoy it. And some bourbons, to be honest, may be better neat. Some bourbons you may find to you may be better on the rocks, and it's not about diluting it. The flavor profile often changes a little bit, once it's been chilled, and there's been like a literal drop of water added. But as far as the flavor notes go here, guys, so it's again aged 9 years. By the way, of course, I'm not sponsored by anybody, let alone Jim Beam. But it's a terrific bourbon. It's been aged for 9 years, so you get a lot of beautiful toasty oak char from this beverage here, which it doesn't always translate just because something's been aged for more than a couple years. Sometimes it still has a very strong, more of a natural or raw oak flavor, if you will, instead of something that's really, really warm and toasty. To me, Knob Creek, in some ways, one aspect of it kind of tastes to me like a s'mores that's just not as sweet, like a toasted marshmallow. And you get that from the toasted oak char. I'm going to review another soon, hopefully if my GoPro cooperates, that is double oaked. So you often get that from something that's well aged or been double oaked, but not always. So this has a very beautiful, toasty, warm oak char. It's kind of marshmallowy. Of course, there are, as you might expect, especially from the color, you definitely get notes of caramel, toffee, vanilla, things like that. Personally, myself, I don't get the world of an earthiness to it, what some people describe as tobacco or leathery or earthy or, something like soil. Don't ask me how some people arrive at that, but again, everybody picks up different things on their palate, so. But the biggest thing that I think Knob Creek has to offer is just very well rounded. A lot of bourbons out there can tend to be one-trick ponies, if you will. They may hit one or two flavor profiles very well, and a lot of others fall flat. Some bourbons out there may be great to the nose, and as soon as the sip goes down, and then once it trickles through your throat, it's kind of like, hey, show's over, guys. Knob Creek is not that bourbon. It is very well rounded. It's got maybe a little bit of earthiness. I pick up personally a slight bit of coriander, a little orange flavor, and it definitely has some great toasty oak char and a good amount of sweetness to it. I couldn't recommend this bourbon more, so if you're new out there to bourbon, thank God I've actually made it to 6 minutes here. Looks like I might have fixed the problem. If you're new to bourbon, you owe it to yourself to get a bottle of Knob Creek, even if it's a little more than you usually spend. Again, I do not by any means make a world of money, but, I tend to pick things up personally, that range from the low 20s to the mid 30s. I often don't go past that, though. Occasionally I will. I don't really consider this cheap. I don't really consider it expensive. And if you've never tried Knob Creek 9 years, it is absolutely worth every dollar of your money. One of the last things I want to say is Knob Creek also has a 12-year that is, I haven't had it, to be honest, guys. I've been thinking about picking up a bottle. But from what I gather from many, many reviews that I've seen, it's a very, very good bourbon. I just don't think from the reviews that I've watched, it's worth all the extra money because it goes for almost twice of what this guy goes for. And if you watch enough bourbon reviews, especially blind tastings, you'll kind of gather that it does very, very well. And they're not asking a ton of money for it, okay? It's not a $100 bottle. But depending on where you go and so on and so forth, it could be almost twice as much as this. And I would much rather have 2 bottles of the 9-year than 1 bottle of the 12-year that may, in some regards, be slightly superior. And some people might not be any better at all. Again, everybody's opinion is different. But one thing is for sure, Knob Creek is a very, very solid bourbon. I'm not saying it can't be beat. But at $35, you'd be hard-pressed. You'd be really hard-pressed to beat it. And with that, guys, I think I'll close up. Thank goodness it looks like I fixed the issue on the old GoPro, because that's like shot number 4 or something like that. Now, granted, they weren't really big, but anyhow, this is very, very tasty stuff. And it's widely available, unlike a lot of bourbons that are allocated, like bourbon, Buffalo Trace and this and that, which, sometimes are really good. Sometimes you might say are kind of overrated. You can find Knob 9 just about anywhere. And like I said, I think it punches well above its weight. I think it drinks just as well as many, $40, $50, $60 bourbons that I've had. With that, guys, we'll do another one of these soon. Like I said, I've got a very, very tasty double oaked bottle that I opened a little while ago that I'd like to introduce to you guys as well. But happy bourbon hunting. Hope you, those of you who are watching, are enjoying learning about bourbon along with me, because by no means am I an expert. Last thing I want to say is we're not buddies. I do follow them. I'm subscribed. But there's a channel called SLB Drinks that I really, really enjoy here on YouTube. So give SLB Drinks a try if you're into bourbon, because I think they're a couple great guys and a really good channel. And with that, we'll see you on the next one.